The ProAct Know-How.
Hi and welcome to this episode of Living and Working Abroad with ProAct Sam. Getting ready for breakfast, things to do. We've got a difficult end to 2020. We're all going into lockdown throughout Europe. What things do we need to do to get ready for Brexit this time round? There's lots of things that need to be done, but some of the things are already sealed. So whatever news that we hear in the media is to do with a trade agreement which has impact on businesses working cross-border between the UK and the EU, but a lot of other factors are already established. But some of those negotiations within the trade agreement have a direct impact on families and individual expats living and working abroad. So that's what we're going to cover in this vlog. We're going to cover things that you need to do before the end of December to make sure that your Brexit it does not impact on you living and working abroad. So here we go. In the withdrawal treaty, EU citizens' rights have already been written in and they've been secured. So that means that any EU expat living and working abroad in the EU that's registered in that country before the end of December 2020 will retain the equivalent EU citizens' rights for the rest of their life. That includes all EU expats living in the UK and includes all UK expats living and working abroad in an EU country. But it's not enough to be living there. EU expats can go to the UK and start work as an EU citizen, but there's no formal registration process. You have to register on the settlement scheme to be qualified to retain your rights for living and working abroad. Similarly, UK expats normally do have to register as a resident because the EU countries use ID schemes. You have to have a residency ID. That needs to be done before the end of December. With COVID, with all the restrictions, you need to get that done. Any UK expat in the EU who's registered and resident before the end of December retains the equivalent EU citizens' rights for the rest of their life, if that's what they want. So it doesn't matter for living abroad in your overseas property whether the UK is in or out of the EU, but you have to be resident and registered. We had a colleague recently in a local EU hospital who had other expats in the ward with them, had been living in the EU for over 10 years and weren't resident with 2 months to go. The healthcare will stop. You have to take action. You have to take action. So the UK and EU citizens' resident rights and right to work carries on indefinitely if you're resident before the end of December. If you're not sure, contact us at proactpartnership.com and we'll guide you on what action you need to take now, because there's only 6 weeks left to get this done. Any UK expat that's registered in the EU before the end of December retains their rights under the reciprocal social insurance agreement and healthcare agreement existing within the EU. That means that if they have an S1 through ill health, or if they have an S1 through retirement, then they will continue to have healthcare available in their country of residence, be that Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, Greece, Bulgaria, or Cyprus. So if you're registered as a resident in that country with an S1 and you register your S1 and you're a tax resident in that country, your medical cover will continue beyond Brexit. There's no change to that. Better still, if you're considering retiring, and maybe in a year or two, if you're registered as resident in your country in the EU before the 31st of December, before the end of the transition period, your S1 will continue to work. So even if your retirement date, you've early retired and your retirement date is in 5 years' time for state pension, when your S1 will be issued, that will still, that S1 will still come to you and it will still work as if you were an EU citizen living and working in the EU. So Brexit won't impact that as long as the EU expat in the UK or the UK expat in the EU is living and working abroad before and registered before the end of December. So that's a big point, to retain those medical cover. Different countries have different medical schemes. The UK will leave the reciprocal agreement with the EU as a whole, so things will be changed and agreed on a separate basis. Tax rules are not to do with the EU, so there's a reciprocal social insurance agreement that won't necessarily be continued after the end of Brexit, so you have to assume at the moment that it's going to finish, and therefore any UK or EU expat has to then qualify under the local rules. So if you move to the EU and start working and paying social insurance, you can qualify for the healthcare system, you can qualify for benefits there. You might need to subscribe for a few years before you can gain benefits. Some systems are more generous than others. Some systems are universal, some are not, some are very limited. So there's some schemes that will automatically give you healthcare access on day one, like the UK, like Portugal, like Spain. Other countries, you have to pay in or be qualified for a period of time. You need to be aware of that before you relocate. You may need private medical cover, you may need travel insurance. Consider that, and if you want any help and guidance, contact us at partnership.com. But generally, if you're living and working abroad, you will get your healthcare access and potentially your social insurance benefits. Any UK expat, the day they become non-resident to the UK, they no longer qualify for the NHS treatment. If your S1 is registered abroad, then you can reciprocate back. The EHIC card will no longer work. The EHIC card will no longer work. So a UK expat with an S1 could potentially get a EHIC card from their new country. That's up to that country to agree, but essentially that wouldn't work in the UK anyway. So the UK will have a different system. Now they need to get clarification whether a British citizen who's an expat returns temporarily to the UK, whether they've got access to the NHS. Technically you don't, and we're looking around for clarification on that. But this depends upon whether the UK extends reciprocal healthcare agreements with the EU as a group on a bilateral basis with individual countries. So the UK have already got a reciprocal agreement with Ireland, so expats can go backwards and forwards between Ireland and the UK, living and working without visa restrictions, as if, you know, in the EU, but it's nothing to do with the EU, it's to do with the Great Britain Act of 1949. In the same way as between Australia and New Zealand citizens, Australia citizens can move freely between the two countries for living and working without visas, without residence permits. So there is still that flexibility in the system, but there's also the new rules that come in. Tax is not the prerogative of the EU, so any tax rules for business, any tax rules for individuals, any tax rules for pensions don't change with Brexit, don't change with the transition period. So a 5% pension tax in Cyprus still applies. A 10% flat rate income tax in Bulgaria still applies. Portugal's non-resident scheme with flat rate taxes still applies. So there are lots of flexible options in the EU and around the world for UK expats to take advantage of if that suits their business. So if you're a contractor and where you're based doesn't actually much matter, you can base your business abroad which is effective for you, maybe even gives you some EU rights that you otherwise wouldn't have if your business was solely based in the UK, and allows you to manage your affairs tax efficiently, much the same as the rich have done by basing themselves in Monaco for the last 100 years. So this is your opportunity to consider your tax situation. That doesn't change for your business. So it could be that you could still continue to operate a UK business from a personal tax residence in the EU. One thing that will change from the end of December is that UK leaves the VAT. VAT is part of customs, so it's part of the trade deal, the customs union, and the customs and tariffs. It's all part of that. This is what VAT is. But the UK will no longer, although they'll still have VAT, it won't be part of the EU scheme. So reciprocal offsetting of invoices won't necessarily be applied. British or European companies may have to pay the VAT up front rather than reclaim it later. And these will present cash flow difficulties or challenges in the early days, although the UK have said with VAT changes that they'll give some concessions and as well as on tariffs and customs, and not apply them until the 1st of July 2021. So although the transition period ends at the end of December, for customs and tariffs, the need to fill out a customs form and submit it might not necessarily apply to EU goods for the first 6 months for UK businesses while they up speed to get everything correct and into the new order. The EU is about borderless trade. That means you've got no customs declarations, but for every other country, when you buy something online from China or from America, you have a customs declaration. That will now apply to EU countries as well. So it's different, but it's not new. It's what operates under the World Trade Organization rules. So it's a bit different, but it's the same world. The UK have already committed to operating under the World Trade Organization rules, and that 87% of the imports into the UK will be a tariff free. So they're not going to, UK are not going to apply tariffs to everybody unilaterally. Now, as far as the EU is concerned, if the UK is outside the EU with no trade agreement, then it automatically would apply tariffs to the UK, unless the EU and the UK can agree a special temporary arrangement to give the UK a concession not to be charged tariffs by the EU. So the situation we've got at the end of this year is that tariffs won't be applied by the UK for 87% of their trade worldwide. If there's no deal, they could be applied by the EU unless a temporary transition arrangement is made through the World Trade Organization. Other countries around the world that trade through the World Trade Organization include Japan, China and America. The countries that are bigger than France, Germany and the UK as trading companies around the world. So there will be some prices that may go up, but there'll be other prices that go down. Don't forget that anything imported from the US effectively has a tariff applied by the EU. Same with China. You will receive some packages from abroad and you end up having to pay some money to receive the package in the post office because it's come from China. That's a tariff. That's a customs tariff that you're paying. So those things might be introduced for EU goods as well. And this is the disruption and the transition that needs to take place. But for the UK, the customs declarations will need to be declared, but tariffs may well not be applied, certainly to 87% of goods imported into the UK. The UK is setting itself up as a free trade bastion. And then for tax, it'll be about new bilateral agreements on medical care and on social insurance. So the UK has bilateral social and healthcare arrangements with countries around the world. The EU is one of the organisations it has an arrangement with, but the UK has arrangements with other countries like Canada and the Caribbean islands already. So if the EU don't agree to work with the UK, and the UK have already said they want to maintain reciprocal social insurance and healthcare arrangements with the EU, but if the EU don't agree to that, after the 1st of January, but only after the end of the transition period, the UK is free to have individual bilateral agreements, individual for healthcare and social insurance with individual EU countries. And similarly, the UK, and I'm very aware I'm jumping about here, after the January, it can vary its VAT arrangement. So for example, in the EU, there's a minimum threshold by which there's a range of turnovers by which a company has to register for VAT, and there's a minimum and a maximum VAT that can be applied. So the minimum VAT rate that can be applied is 15%. Why? The VAT money is the money that goes to Brussels to be then sent out on grant and in infrastructure schemes around the EU. This is where the UK will save a lot of money, and from January next year can come up with all the infrastructure changes and support for COVID, because the VAT money will stop flowing to the EU and will just be within the British government to go to Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and the regions around England. So that's the big change that's going to happen, and that but that will have some consequences on a case-by-case basis depending on what type of trade you're doing and where you're doing it. So VAT rules across border will change. They'll still look the same in the UK, but it'll be a different scheme. And the UK, for example, has got the potential to reduce the standard rate of VAT down from 19 below 15%. So if they wanted to reduce VAT to 5% for next year, they could do that as a way of stimulating business in the next year. Or the government could keep the VAT rate high and then use those funds to reinvest back in Britain rather than in the rest of the Europe. So those VAT rules are changing, so that understanding what your role is and that you might need to pay your full invoice, including the VAT, up front, is a factor that will change. There might be some concessions that first 6 months, but you might need to be prepared for that. If you need an EU base, that could work very well. So a Cyprus holding company could charge you 0% tax on your worldwide income. It's similar to an individual based in Portugal. So you can have your business based in Cyprus and your tax resident anywhere else in the EU, and avoid any liability to tax on worldwide income. So UK expats could be working in, could even become a tax resident in Cyprus with a Cyprus holding company that's got 0% tax on worldwide income, and then they can move around to create the different structures and entities that they're doing around Europe and around the world, but only paying taxes, not paying any Cyprus taxes on that income. So if you've got a site, your holding company is in Cyprus, it's 0% corporation tax. I wouldn't stop a local tax arising, but the business will be based in Cyprus. Therefore, this is how you would avoid a large amount of tax. 0% dividends would be another example, as opposed to whatever the rate is, 25% in Germany, 32% in the UK. So there's lots of options that you've got to be flexible, but they've existed before Brexit and then exist afterwards. So that's some very detailed stuff. We've gone really, really deep there for businesses and the changes that they need to consider. And if you need any information on that, contact us at productpartnership.com. We've got a fantastic retainers service where our retained clients get access to online professional service from advisors and consultants with free reviews online, where they can get answers to their questions to help them through the Brexit and relocation and living and working abroad for tax returns, visas, healthcare, medical things. If you want to know more about our retainer service, go to our website at proactpartnership.com, sign up, and from £30 a month you can access to direct information all the time. Contact us. A couple of other things for personal individuals that you need to consider. We've already mentioned healthcare. If you've got an S1, make sure it's registered in your country. If it's not registered, you may not have your medical cover continued. Make sure your residency is secured in that country before the end of December. If it's not, you may lose out on EU citizens' rights. They will stop at the end of December. But once you're registered, you've got those for the rest of your life. So even if full retirement is in 5 years' time, the fact that you're already registered with your connection, with your overseas property in Portugal, in Spain, in France, means that you can move on, retire, get the S1, get the healthcare, and live and work abroad indefinitely. You can still set up a business, there's no restrictions on that. But as an individual, if you are living abroad, in the EU, special rules, you don't need to change your driving license if you move countries. So you should, but when you're outside the EU, you have to do that. International driving license and permits apply, and that would mean that if you're an EU citizen, a UK expat in the EU before the end of the transition period in December, can change a driving license automatically for a local one without any additional testing. After, within 6 months, you would need to change your driving license, and that may well involve taking a new test and maybe even licensing skills. Anybody looks at how complicated the UK driving test is now, with the theory and the online and the understanding of English, as well as doing the road test, it could be quite a nightmare for anybody just to carry on driving. So get your driving license changed if you're living and working in the EU or the UK as an expat. Get your driving license changed before the end of December. Have you got a passport? Passports become more relevant now. So EU citizens have free movement. So if you've got residency and you're registered on an initial basis or permanent citizen, that's fine, because that will still get you in and out of the country visa free, but only between your country of residence and the UK. So a Spanish residence permit allows you free visa travel between Spain and the UK, even after Brexit, but not to the rest of the EU. Now, UK has got visa-free travel to many countries around the world, but your passport becomes more relevant. You need an up-to-date passport. You need to have at least 6 months running on your passport. So if your passport is up for renewal in the early part of next year, especially with the COVID world that we live in, you need to consider getting that renewed now. You may not be allowed into a country if your passport hasn't got 6 months to run. The reason for that is that under international law, you're allowed into a country for up to 3 months for short-term working or holiday stay, but you're expected to leave after that 3 months or register as a local resident. So somebody coming to the EU, say coming to Cyprus after Brexit date, if you want to stay for 6 months, in theory after 3 months you have to register with the local residents. Now in America, how people do this is that they have to apply for a green card, and sometimes they don't do that. So literally people could be living an expat lifestyle in Florida but have to leave and go on a holiday once every 3 months to exit and re-entry because they haven't got their residency permit up to date. And this could be the scenario that the expats could carry on without the local residency rights, without the local healthcare rights, that you could spend 3 months at a time. But that's 3 months within a 6 month period. So if you plan on being a bit of a nomad and having 3 months one country, 3 months another, 3 months another, that would work. But just bear in mind, you're going to need your medical cover to move around those different countries, and your passport will always need to have 6 months to run on that. So get your passport updated. All these issues about driving license, medical cover, tax registration, visas and residency, again, we cover on our retainer service for families. So our retainer service has got experts and advisors and consultants for business and families living and working abroad. And from £30 a month, you get access to online content and online advisors, free reviews and answers to your questions to get you through the next tax return, the next Brexit hurdle, the next residency visa, the next healthcare issue. Thanks for listening to this webinar. We're very excited to offer you, our expat clients, our retainer services to cover a broad range of topics for our clients living and working abroad, be it family and business, in an EU country or around the world. We can give you the help and advice that you need for driving licenses, visas, medical cover, and your tax regime and your social insurance to protect your family and business living and working abroad across borders and down generations. Look forward to hearing from you. Go along to our website, sign up to our retainer and get access to a whole wealth of experience from around the world, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for listening.
The ProAct Know-How, brought to you by ProAct.